Hello, and welcome to First Geek 411 Book Club. We are getting ready to finish up Hefty Tome Summer, discussing the second half of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. She hefty. Um,
Yeah, mine's here.
not as hefty.
Yeah, mine
Um,
was significantly less hefty than. Although I did see this in the bookstore, I keep on referencing this Barnes and Noble trip that I did. Like this, I actually went and found the book there, and I was like, oh yeah, it's a big one.
yeah. Um, Before we get started, you can find us at all of the locations. First Geek 411 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Join our Discord server or shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Watch live on our Twitch every Monday night at 6:45 Mountain Time and find all our videos over on YouTube. And you can also check out some sweet, sweet merch at our Redbubble store. I'm Shanine, and with me is Cameron.
Hello, hello.
All right. In trying to summarize the second half of this hefty tome, I still ended up with 3/4 of a page, so buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up, everyone. Here we go. I needed this recap too. like,
Okay. Last time on Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, the pupil and teacher who had differing magic philosophies were providing the English government with magical assistance however they could. A fairy was putting people under enchantments that caused them to live half lives in England and the land of fairies, and someone was impersonating Strange selling magic lessons via letter. It turns out the impersonator was Drawlight, and this betrayal led to his friends rejecting him and his complete and utter ruination financially and socially and legally. Everything. Lascelles, who seemed largely uninterested in literally everything up to this point, especially in doing work of any kind, proves himself to be a dastardly mastermind who starts manipulating Norrell and kind of taking over everything behind the scenes. Strange and Norrell have a falling out because all the little disagreements finally built up, and finally speaking as equals isn't enough to save them. And they prove they definitely aren't still obsessed with each other by writing articles with brutal takedowns of each other's ideas. Arabella Strange is enchanted by the gentleman with the thistledown hair and dies under mysterious circumstances, and it is very upsetting. Strange takes on some pupils and writes a book, and then pieces out for Italy. Norrell is jealous and petty and causes every copy of Strange's book to disappear. Strange becomes obsessed with summoning the fairy and decides the best way to do it is by becoming insane, which via some very questionable methods he does succeed at. He discovers Arabella is still alive and trapped in the fairy realm with Lady Poole and learns of Norrell's part in all this. The fairy is super mad and traps Strange in eternal darkness, and people back in England start to get very concerned. Eventually, Strange makes it back to England and brings English magic with him, and people are expecting a mad showdown between him and Norrell. But they then join forces to save Arabella by attempting to summon the Raven King to help them, which actually results in Stephen Black being imbued with power for long enough to destroy the gentleman with the thistledown hair and releasing everyone from his enchantment. Stephen Black becomes the new king of the fairies, magic takes on a new life in England, and Strange and Norrell are still trapped in darkness but disappear from England to try and break the fairy's spell, but mostly just to be magic bros. The end.
great summary. Like, yeah. Um, I mean, you are like it is crazy. Like, there's a reason we're doing this as two parts of like we read for each half of these more than we do for many other book clubs. Like, just in terms of page count, like each half would probably be one of our longest reads, and so like there's a lot that goes on. At the same time, is there a lot that happens? We'll talk about that during book club.
All right. Now that we have finished this whole thing, Give me a 3-word review.
It wasn't worth it, which is 4 words, but you know.
I'm kind of stumped.
Emma is hanging out with us in chat. She couldn't be on with us tonight, but she says way too long. Yes.
All right. Thoughts on the second half of the book overall, and did your opinion change from the first half?
I do really like the second half of this book. Like, I'm going to give it a lot of flack later on, but like, broadly speaking, I really liked the second half. I like the journey Strange goes on. I like the ramp up with the gentleman with the thistle down hair. Like, I think that that's really interesting. I like what happens with Stephen Black and stuff like that. Like, I do generally speaking really like this second half, and I think it is a very interesting story, and I I don't know if it changes my opinion on the book as a whole. Um, but like I do like this second half.
Yeah, I agree. The second half really stepped it up in terms of like action and intrigue. I felt a lot more interested in what was
Mm-hmm.
going on in the second half. Um, yeah, it was a lot more exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it does make me like the book as a whole more, but there was like a lot to get through to get to that point.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I well, we can talk specific dislikes in a later question, but like I think that this book as a whole for me is summarized with it's a long walk for a short drink of water. And like water's great, but it's a long walk to get there.
Yeah. All right, last time. Oh, I guess I should also mention that you can watch part 1 of this book club over on our YouTube channel, wherein we made a lot of predictions
It's a
about.
link in the description. So
uh, yes, we made a lot of predictions about where we thought this book was gonna go and end up, and I feel some of them were bang on, and some of them were not that. So we're gonna talk about that. Um, so one of our predictions: literally any of the characters we know about become the villain.
which is technically correct.
Yes.
Like
Who would you say the villain of this story is?
I mean, it's kind of everyone. Like like this kind of goes into like what we discussed last time of like there's not really a protagonist to this book. Like and I mean, if you have to pick someone, it's the fairy, right? Like that kind of is the like the gentleman with the thistle down hair is I guess the villain. Like they are the one that must be stopped to save the world. But like I mean, Jonathan Strange like straight up murders someone. Like we'll talk about that later on. But like Mr. Norrell is like literally the worst. I said this last time. He's like the epitome of lawful evil. Like he's just like complacent as he like gets the system to benefit him over everyone else and then takes away any chance anyone else has of success. Like he's the quintessential lawful evil. And it's like it's hard to be like a lawful evil hero. Like he's pretty clearly the problem as well. But like so I mean I still like err on the side of it being Norrell or the man with the thistle down hair, but like there's interpretations again that like literally any like you could say no, Cameron, it's Stephen Black who's the villain, and then like give some example. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, it is Stephen. Like so many options.
There are. I think, yeah, it is very much a story of antagonists. And I would also add Lascelles to that
Mm-hmm.
list of antagonists for sure, because we find out that he's actually been like very involved in the background this whole time,
Mm-hmm.
and like specifically setting Norrell and Strange against each other. I'm like, you're making everything worse. Just stop.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Another of our predictions, Vinculus is the Raven King or related to the Raven King.
Yeah. I mean, the word related's doing some heavy lifting there, but like, I mean, he is the Raven King's book.
Yeah, I think I said that he was like an oracle of the Raven King or something, which I feel is very close,
Yeah.
being the Raven King's book of magic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that one in the win column for me.
Yeah, I was definitely wrong. Like, I was thinking much more like literally related. Like we were gonna find out that he was a descendant or something like that. But like, or again, or like was literally the Raven King and maybe didn't know it. But like, yeah, I definitely did not get a win on that one.
Still, considering where we were at and where it did go to, completely reasonable
Yeah.
guess.
That's like the crazy thing about some of these predictions. Like even the first one, that literally any character we know becomes the villain. Like it's crazy that we are at the point where like that was a reasonable prediction. Like, I mean, I know like I was very confused. I think we were all very confused with the first half of this book club, but like that's where we were. Like, ugh.
All right, Norrell snaps and has to be stopped by the other characters.
Yeah. I mean, like, Norrell snapped a long time ago, but like, I think this is definitely one of like technically happens, but like was definitely not the intent of the prediction, at least on
Yeah,
my end. So
it was not a dramatic snap. It
yeah,
was just a, well, it's Norrell being Norrell.
yeah, it was a normal like lawful evil snap of like I didn't get my way, the rules aren't working in my favor, and so
Norrell and Strange have a falling out and fight it out.
this pretty decisively does not happen. Like,
Does.
um,
I feel better that the other characters in the book were also expecting that.
yeah,
It's like, see, yeah, I think that's probably the one we were most wrong on.
yeah.
Fairies are the central aspect of the conflict between Norrell and Strange.
That one,
Yeah.
100% correct. Like that one also felt the most obvious from the first half. Like that one kind of feels like the I don't know, I don't want to be like the well duh prediction, but like it is like Norrell lying about the fairies' help is pretty central to the beginning of the book, and so
Yep. Gentleman enthralls Strange.
yeah,
Also, no. Gentleman gives Norrell a taste of his own medicine.
no. Norrell doesn't get what's coming to him,
Oh.
or not really, I guess, but
Yeah, we'll discuss that later too.
yeah,
Other people who are enthralled have issues with reality versus fiction.
no,
No, not the ones.
yep.
who are having issues with reality and fiction.
Yeah, they are literally the most fine of any of the characters in this book are the other people that are enthralled. Like,
Yeah.
again, this is like the 0% correct. Like,
At least one of Norrell and Strange are dead by the end of the book, or at least taken to another world.
ish. Like, definitely a stretch, but like, not entirely incorrect.
Yeah, I feel like this one we were more imagining them being taken to like the land of fairies,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and they're just like disappeared
Yeah.
now,
Ish. Maybe.
vaguely.
Because, like, the cat can still get in the house or whatever. But, like,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Vinculus kills everyone. No,
nope.
not even a little bit.
Yeah. In fact, like, the opposite.
Yeah,
Like,
like
someone kills Vinculus. But he got better.
and the Raven King returns. Slash is here and potentially takes magic from the world.
Yeah.
I mean, he did return. I think he's the one that resurrected Vinculus.
No. I can see that. Like, I just kind of like blew past that part. But like, yeah, I think that makes sense. That like he's because they get into the idea of like magical people not appearing as they looked, but like people knowing it's them. And so like I definitely think that that makes sense as like a way of interpreting that scene.
To me, that's what was being implied.
Yeah. I wonder if that's because there is like a mini series. I wonder if that's clear.
Oh yeah, I. It's on Prime. I'm gonna watch it. Haven't.
Okay,
Started
so
yet.
apparently I just did a very quick Google. Um, and I mean, granted, this is the AI overview, but it does say in Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, the Raven King resurrects Vinculus in Chapter 7 Reactor. And then the Raven King writes a new book on Vinculus's skin. So, at least in the show, according to the AI overview, that definitely like aligns. So,
All right. So that is it for our predictions. Say about 50-50.
yeah,
Generously speaking.
yeah. There definitely is the issue of like intent with some of them, but like I feel like we did pretty good.
Not bad, not bad.
Yeah.
For what we had to go on
Exactly.
in the first half.
Yeah, I do think it. Like we kind of talked about this last month as well with part one. I'd be very curious to see where we would have been if we'd actually done the cutoff at section two. So like if since it's like a 3-section book, if we would have actually finished section 2 and then had like a shorter section, like just section 3 for the finale. I'm kind of curious to like where we would have been had we had the cutoff there, but like what our predictions would have looked like.
Yeah. Alrighty. What are your thoughts on Mr. Norrell now? What was your opinion of him at the beginning of the novel versus now?
as I was saying earlier, I think like Norrell is the most. I said this last week. Or last month. I don't think it's changed. I think Norrell is the most realistic person in this book, in the sense of like he discovers magic, or discovers that like actual magic, practical magic, is real. It's not just this historical thing. And then he proceeds to make sure that no one else can do it but him. And I think he is just like such a realistic person, and I hate him so much for that. Like, and yeah, I really, and kind of throughout the book, I just don't like Norrell. I think that there's so many of the problems that like Norrell causes, either directly in the sense of the deal to resurrect Lady Pole, and like, oh, I know this fairy's gonna trick me, so I'm gonna try to trick him, and clearly fall into his trap. Like, to just like other stuff too, of like keeping Strange in the dark about so much stuff, like not wanting to train other magicians. Like, there are so many things that like he could have done, even to like the petty thing, like you mentioned in the summary, of like he's so upset about Strange's book that he casts a spell that none of the copies can exist. Like, it's just, he's just so petty, and unfortunately realistic because of that. But like,
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like he wouldn't have been that bad of a guy if he had a better group of friends. Um, if he had met Strange before he met Drawlight and Lascelles, I think he would have been a very different person. He's very persuadable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He literally gets like tricked or taken advantage of throughout like the whole book. Like,
yeah. And I think it referenced in the where it has left me, the prophecy at the beginning, and he's like the magician who's governed by fear, basically. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. Which is sad. Just like, oh. Yeah, he could have been different. And I think we do see in like those very last chapters where him and Strange are reunited and like working together, like what he could have been, maybe what he is going to be in the future now that we don't get to see. Like he needed a friend. And he's like a lot better of a person when he is able to share his whole library and stuff like that. Like, yeah. I don't know. I feel like I can't hate him. I just feel bad.
Yep. I feel like I just want to yell like, do better. Like, like he's like, he doesn't need a hug. He just needs someone to like slap him and be like, be a better person. Like,
all right. Thoughts on Jonathan Strange and any changed opinions on him?
I definitely found Jonathan harder to like in this second half. Like, I feel like he's very much presented as like where Norrell is like ruled by like fear and anxiousness. Strange is the one that like is, oh, let's try new things. Let's figure stuff out. I don't know how to do this. I guess I'll figure something out. Like, he's kind of the more like Tony Stark of the two. And then like the second half of the book, just like he's a lot harder to like. Um, well, like I think the story of him is interesting when he's in Italy. Like a lot of it is just like, dude, you just like. I mean, I get that he thinks his wife died and is like going through it, but like, it's just like you're just like struggling so much, and it's not like struggling in an I feel sorry for you way, but in the like, what are you doing kind of way. Like he had such like bachelor energy without like it's just like I'm gonna just make a huge mess, books everywhere. I don't know what's going on. Like he just like kind of becomes a jerk, like even more so than he was earlier in the book. But like I feel like he just becomes so much like harder to care about.
Yeah. I think if I'm remembering for him as well, the prophecy said that he was the magician, like governed by pride, which
Yeah.
also makes sense. um, yeah, I think he does become a lot harder to like. I agree. I think what redeems him is that Arabella stands by him this whole time. And we know that she has her head on straight. So, like, he
Mm-hmm.
can't be all bad, right?
Yeah.
He's just in his own little world, doing his own thing, making tinctures out of dead mice. And
Is it mice?
yes,
Is it
oh,
not from the crazy cat lady?
it was a dead mouse from her apartment.
Oh, okay. My interpretation was that he had turned her into the mouse.
Oh, that's not how I read
Oh no,
it.
because they're passing the mouse. Like you're right. Yeah. Now that I say that
It
out
was
loud, that's definitely not it.
okay. It was like on her plate.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
But yes, super gross. And then he just keeps taking it. And I'm like, here's the problem with trying to go insane is that probably you will succeed, but what is your escape plan?
Yeah. I'll just drive myself crazy, and then we'll figure it out from there.
Because we'll totally have a grasp on reality at that point to be
Yeah.
able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, strange.
Yeah. All right. Any standout side characters from the second half?
Uh, in chat, Emma said MVP award goes to the crazy cat lady, but like, um, I liked. Is it? It's the person that's like guarding the castle, and like there's the trees of like all the people that they've killed, and then we find out that every time you kill the guard, you become the guard. I forget who it is that gets switched into that role, but like I thought that
Cells.
it is Lascelles. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I wasn't. I didn't remember if it was him or Childemas, but I thought that was really cool. Like I like that we kind of get this like, oh, you think because I think it's Childemas goes first, but then comes back and doesn't engage with the person. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, so I like this idea that like Lascelles has this journey of like, well, I'm better than him, and then goes and gets captured by the enchantment. Like, I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
hard to be like that's a character, but like I liked that thing situation.
Yeah. And side note, I feel like that is the only instance in the whole book where somebody gets what they deserve.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I mean, for the book as a whole, now having the whole story, like Stephen Black is a super cool character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I feel like we should have seen coming this whole time. Once they explain it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that was kind of obvious with the whole nameless slave bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Um, I do think that that was a fun way of getting around the limitations of magic, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like the one magical limitation that's introduced in the whole story that you have to have their name.
Yeah. What a coincidence. Yeah. Um, sure, sure. Yeah. The one rule that's not introduced till towards the end of the book, and then it's just in time for us to immediately have the resolution for it.
A fun twist.
Yeah.
Right. Any standout moments from the second half?
Um, I say this knowing I just got it wrong. I did like Strange with the cat lady. Like I thought that was a very interesting. Like Strange is such a learner that he's like, okay, I need to figure out how to go crazy so I can meet the fairies. So why don't I just go learn from someone that everyone says is crazy? And like, it was a fun little excursion. Um, and um, then I liked some of the stuff that happens with the man with the Thistledown's manor. Um, but the idea that like the manor reflects the owner. And so once Stephen Black becomes the new king of fairies, like the manor begins to change and all of that kind of stuff. And I thought that that was a really cool like a payoff to why Thistledown's manor is the way that it is because that's how he is. And it's like I thought that's cool. I always love that idea of like innate magic of places like that, where it's just like this is not someone casting a spell. This is just the physics of how this place behaves that causes this to happen. And so I thought that was a very fun way of like saving that location. And so
I think one standout thing from the second half for me was Lord Byron and just how funny all of that was.
mm-hmm.
I thought it was hilarious and so appropriate that Strange and Byron hated each other to begin with
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually become friends. And I don't even remember who said it. I think it was somebody gossiping about them back in England or something. And he's like, mad and a friend of Lord Byron. And I'm like, yeah, that's
Feels right.
sounds
Feels
about
right.
right. uh, good. Um, I think the rest of my standout moments I'll save for a couple of questions. Any dislikes?
Like, the journey is just not worth it. Like, as a whole, like, we talked about this last month with like I feel like Piranesi is very intentionally vague and intentionally confusing, but like I really like where that book ends up and how it ties it all together. And while this book kind of does the same thing, like this one just doesn't there's not really a mystery to the same extent. Like there's not really a like I just don't find myself caring about these characters as much as I did for Piranesi and wanting to figure out what was going on. Even some of the stuff that like felt obvious with Piranesi, and then it was like, okay, cool, we got the confirmation that that is what that is, that kind of thing. Like for this, just like a lot of it just didn't feel. It did not feel that the juice was worth the squeeze. Like going to the classic Cameron book club thing of a book is either a third too short or a third too long. This is like 2/3 too long. Like, like I really just I feel like if this would have been a 2-part book where we cut out like that middle section, not a lot would have been missed, and we would have like still had the same crux of the story. And like, yeah, it just feels like this book. If you told me Clarke was paid by the word for this book, I would believe you that that's what happened here. Like, that's why this book is the length that it is. It just does not feel like this story warrants being 750 pages, 32 hours for the audiobook. Like, it just seems crazy to me that this is how this book came out. And like, I don't know, looking at reviews, maybe I'm the one that's wrong, but like, I just don't understand how this was, as a whole package, I don't understand how this was worth it to read. And even to the point that like I don't necessarily have individual things that I dislike. It's more of just like no offense intended to Tolkien, but like the Tolkienification of the story, where it's just like here's a whole lot of detail on stuff that doesn't matter. And like it just really feels like this needed to be cut down somewhere, somehow. I did not find the amount of stuff endearing me to characters, and maybe that's the point. but like uh but like I don't know. What about you?
Yeah. I I think overall I did end up enjoying the book. Like I'd still give it a fairly high score. However, I did go into it with really high expectations because I've only ever heard like the most glowing of reviews about it. Like everyone says it's absolutely amazing. And I don't know if I just went in with too high of expectations for it. But yeah, it felt too long and the build up was too slow. There there was a lot in the first half that I feel was not relevant to the story being told.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as another example, like one of my complaints for like Darker Shade of Magic is that like I feel like that book gets going really slow, but it really endears you to those characters. Like it's worth that slowness because of what it builds to and how it but it's what it builds to, not in the last 100 pages of a 700-page book. It's what it builds to 150 pages in. Like, to the point that, like, you brought the stat last month that, like, Jonathan Strange is not referenced for the first, I think it was 120 pages or something like that. Like I don't remember if you like you might still have that marked or whatever, but like it's
in my copy, which has 1,006 pages, Jonathan Strange is mentioned for the first time on page 160, and his name first appears on page 161.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's just, that's crazy to me. Like,
yeah, that's what, like 15% into the book or something like that.
Yeah. And like, that's when we should be getting a payoff for that slowness. Like, and it's just, oh man. But yeah, and I think, to the point that you just made, I think it's a good book. But like, I don't know, is it? It's just not worth it. Like, I honestly feel like you could just say, "Hey, read the last section," and you'd be fine. like that would be fine. Like,
just about. This is part of the reason I'm so curious now to watch the miniseries. Is like, is this better in a faster format?
Yeah. I did look. I think the miniseries is 7 episodes, so like that feels much better way to digest this story than this gigantic book. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just the fact that for the first 500 pages, I was reading it, but I did not necessarily always want to be reading it. I didn't not want to read it, but I wasn't like dying to read it.
Yeah.
All right. I think, especially coming from a female author, the proportion of men and women, particularly in central roles, and then the roles that we find them in within the story, is significant and purposeful. I think choosing a time period where very patriarchal society, and we're even in like this fantasy version of the world, that it's still like men do the magic.
Yeah.
You know, in the footnotes there are some women, but they were usually causing trouble of some kind, or like
Yeah. It very much has the vibe of like men do
low.
magic, witches get burned at the stake. Like that kind of thing of like.
Yeah. But also all of the men, as we have discussed, are very antagonistic and like not always so bright.
Yeah.
And all of the women, I say, aside from like the actually insane cat lady and the one like aunt in Italy, all of the other female characters are the most like solid, intelligent, witty.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
people.
like, it's Annabella, right? Annabella Strange.
Arabella.
Like, okay. Like, she's amazing. Like, she's, I mean, this goes all the way back to our very first book club of the like award for who this book should have been about. And remember when we did like Sherlock Holmes and we talked about how we want the book from Strange's landlady and from Watson's wife. Like we want their stories, and like I feel like that's Arabella here. Like she is way more down to earth, reasonable, intelligent than like every other male character or every male character in this book, including Jonathan Strange, her husband. Like, but like she just gets sidelined, and by getting like they kind of are building up to her having a very prominent part, and then she gets enchanted and then dead. Like, I, I don't know. It's just so like, why?
Mm-hmm. So when they are enchanted and Strange finds Arabella and Lady Poole um, in the land of fairies, I like. I I think I'm intrigued by their reactions to him. Like
Mhm.
Arabella wants to go with Strange, but is like really hesitant still, and Lady Poole is having absolutely none of it. Um, and Arabella says, "I know you do not put a great deal of faith in what men can do, but I put no faith in them at all." Interrupted Lady Poole. "I know what it is to waste years and years upon vain hopes of help from this person or that. No hope at all is better than ceaseless disappointment." Um, yeah, like I feel like Susanna Clarke's maybe like opinions on gender are obvious, but also like kind of conflicted by how she dealt with characters. I don't know. I just feel like she made so many cool female characters that we barely got to see at all.
Mhm. Yeah, completely agree.
All right. Were there any other themes that stood out to you?
Um, I think there is this theme of people claiming that they're doing like the morally right and like things like this is the morally right way to do something when they're clearly doing it the wrong way. Like, I think that that's like kind of presented a little tongue in cheek throughout the book. Like Norrell is like the prime example of this, where like there are so many times where we get like it's even the quote that we brought up last time that we liked of like could a gentleman or yeah could a gentleman kill by magic or could a man kill by magic? Yes, he could, but a gentleman wouldn't. Like there's like so much of this like moral high ground as people are just like doing these awful things and it's like um and like the like hypocrisy in all of that that like kind of shrouds Norrell and like his fear of being found out and all of that, and kind of how that affects him over the years as he refuses to let anyone find anything that could potentially point to that. It's like that idea of like wanting to hide your mistakes, wanting to hide your faults, and like the consequences of how that happens. Um, I think that that was like that was well done. I think it's an interesting way of like taking those arguments. Like we even see it at a different point with Strange, like when he's at war, and it's the like, oh well, we can move the whole city, but what if we move it somewhere where there's people, like that kind of thing. And so it's like we just aren't going to worry about other people who could be places. We're going to just pick somewhere and hope there's no one there. Like, and so that's really all I got for that.
Yeah, I think just to expand on that, I found it interesting that Matthew 7:16 is actually quoted in the novel, that they will be known by their fruits,
Mm-hmm.
and which, yeah, I think applies to all that you were just saying. It's like, yeah, they say they're doing one thing, but their fruits are maybe not that thing. Um,
Yeah, the self-righteousness of it, but like, yeah.
yeah. All right. Was the ending satisfying to you?
No, like, I think it's a good ending, but it's just not worth it. Like, I like the payoff of the different parts of the prophecy. Um, I think the chapter names are the different parts of the prophecy as well as you get to the latter half. I don't
Some of
remember
them.
when that's, yeah, I don't remember when that started, but there was definitely like a point that's like, wait a second, where that clicked for me. So it could have been something kind of like when we talked Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, where like I missed how early the art references were her.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think that it being quotes is more obvious in the physical copy cuz like regular chapters are just like it's not going to focus, but it's like regular font, and then when it's quoting the prophecy it's in italics. So it's like pretty obvious
okay.
when it is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That'll do it.
Yep.
Yeah. What'd you think of the ending?
Um yeah, it did not feel satisfying. Like what I said earlier, Lascelles feels like the only character to really get what he deserves in the end. Like, yeah, he should be eternally punished and trapped
Mm-hmm.
until someone comes and kills him and hangs him in a tree. Like, Norrell and Strange were causing chaos this whole time. And what do they get? They get to disappear from real life and go read their magic
Yeah, they get
books.
to do literally what they've wanted to do this whole time. Like, yeah.
Arabella gets left
In Italy at
in
first. Like, she has to
Italy.
figure out
Like,
how to get back to England. Like, she's like with people, I guess, but like, she's
yes.
presumed dead still for a long time just because Strange can't be bothered to tell people to go get her. Like, or provide literally anything for her. Like,
Yeah. And just that whole finale with Strange coming and like saying goodbye to her and being like, yeah, we're trying to get out of the darkness, but actually we've been really preoccupied reading about all this other stuff. So, like, maybe I'll see you again. And I'm like,
yeah.
okay, good. Glad that you miss your wife that you just saved.
Yeah. That you did literally the whole latter third of this book to say. Okay. I want to ask you this. So, did that scene remind you of the Pirates of the Caribbean when Will becomes Davy Jones, captain of the ship, and he can only come on land once a year? It's like that, but awful. Like,
I
but
did
like,
not think that,
but
but
he's
I
like an
can
awful
see it.
person instead of Will, like wanting to spend time with Elizabeth. This is just Strange being like, I'll come visit you eventually, maybe. Shrug
If I have
emoji.
to.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
oh man.
Ugh.
Um, what did you
And
think of the like falling action? of like now these magical schools are popping up and the Norrellites versus the Strangeites and stuff like that. What do you think of like that kind of, I don't know, epilogue's the right word, but like, what do you think of that stuff?
It did like that. I think it was great getting to see Childermass and Vinculus in like kind of
Mhm.
some leadership roles. And it's like, yes, maybe they also got what they deserved, like finally getting some recognition.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, also like Norrell and Strange for so long had been pushing like my idea on magic is the
Mhm.
only one. So now that like there's people taking their sides, obviously, but these differing opinions are finally being
Yeah.
allowed to flourish.
Yeah.
I did
Uh,
like that.
yeah. I feel like if that was the latter third of this book, I would have liked it a lot more. Like, if it was the like, again, you cut out the middle section of this book, it's not worth it. Um, and then like, so part one is relatively similar to like what we covered in book club the other time. Part two is this part, again, shortened. And then like part three is more substantial than what we got, but like isn't 300 pages, but is like a lot more of this type of stuff of like, what does it look like 20 years later? I thought that would have been very interesting way of like wrapping up the story. Like have it be like Strange reappears and it's crazy long or whatever. Like I think that would have been interesting, but I did really like that section.
What about Stephen Black becoming king?
I thought that was cool. Like I like that we get the payoff for what um, the gentleman with the thistledown hair has been saying the whole time. But instead of being king of England, he's king of fairy, and he like I thought that that was a very cool twist or like subversion. I guess it's not really a twist, but like so I liked that. I thought that was interesting. I liked that he kills the gentleman with the thistledown hair with everything, and then like nature itself like comes to his aid, and then it's like, oh wait, you're the wrong guy. Bye. Like, I thought that was really interesting. Uh, and that's you referenced that earlier as like the payoff for the not knowing someone's real name. Like, I thought that that was really cool. Um, and yeah, I do wish like I feel like there's a lot of this book that is Stephen Black talking about how he's enchanted and how he like can't understand what's going or can't like be fully present in what's going on because he's so worn down from being enchanted. It's like we get it. Like I wish he would have a little bit more to his character for like that middle section of the book, but I do really like it. I like that payoff.
Yeah. Thing. I am still calling for justice for Stephen Black's love interest, though.
Mm-hmm.
She was there for the first few chapters and then never mentioned
It's just
ever again.
literally falls
And
off
they
the
were
face
going
of
to
the planet.
be so happy together, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
so sad.
Yeah. He just goes to become a king of fairy, doesn't think about her ever again.
Nope. Disappointing.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything else about the ending that we did not discuss?
Um, I was thinking I had something, and now I don't remember what it was. I mean, I guess this is kind of a little bit before the ending, and we referenced this in our predictions. But the like wet noodle of like building up this fight between Strange and Norrell, and then nothing happens. It's just like okay, like yeah, like that is kind of one of those moments of like I didn't expect them to like have a wizard's duel like what we see in like Harry Potter or whatever, but like the fact that they're just so quickly like, oh, we need to come up with a plan for this. It's like, okay. Like, it just, I feel like a lot of fiction has the problem of characters do not just communicate what they're feeling. And this had the opposite, where these two characters that have not communicated what they're feeling this whole time suddenly are perfectly fine. Like, yeah, so like that was something that I feel like I wish would have at least had some other sort of payoff. But I don't know.
For me, I kind of liked that actually. It I think it did like speak to their characters so well. Especially like writing up the synopsis, I had to go back and look. I'm like, wait, what was their falling out like finally over? And it's basically nothing.
Yeah.
They go and have a conversation, and Norrell's like, I'm not mad. Like, let's just be friends. And Strange is like, I came in here expecting a big argument, and now I feel like that's not happening, but I still have to go. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
And that was why they split up.
Yep.
Nothing.
Yep.
So it was just they needed to be together again, and they're like, all right, none of that matters. Let's talk about magic.
Yeah. I'd just be Magic Bros again.
Yep. And I think, yeah, spending all that time expecting a big blowout and then them just being like, oh, good, you're here. So what we have to do.
So I was reading this book. Like,
It was a twist, and I liked it. All right. Was there anything else that stood out to you or any quotes you have to share?
um, I don't think there's any specific quotes that I have. I've been like looking through the Goodreads, as is my tendency for like definitely one of the places that I struggle with audiobooks is like, wait, what was said? What was the actual quote? Since like you can't easily go back, but like looking through like there's not really anything else. Again, I liked that quote from the first section of "Can a magician kill a man by magic?" Like I thought that was a very interesting thing, an interesting way of thinking about it. Uh, but I don't have anything else specific from this section.
Oh, speaking of a gentleman using magic, I do have a bit of a quote that kind of ties into that. This is talking about Strange when he's looking for pupils, and not all of his pupils are gentlemen. Gasp! Some of them are like working men
How
and like
dare?
artists and things. And whoever it is says, surely it is a profession that ought to be reserved for gentlemen. And I think it's Strange says, he is the first person I have met in years who regards magic as something to be enjoyed. And I'm like, hmm, interesting.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I like that. Yeah, and it's like interesting. Like, again, I feel like that's in the moment before Strange goes downhill as a character. Like, and not in that he's poorly written. I want to emphasize that. Like, I think Clarke writes him very well, but like goes downhill in terms of just becomes insufferable. Um, and yeah, I like that.
Um, Something that I noticed was, I believe this was in Italy, someone mentioned the artist Piranesi, and I'm just wondering if these novels take place in the same universe.
Yeah, that was something that like I was wondering. I imagined Piranesi being set more modern. I don't know if that was like based on anything specific, although in
I
that
think it
Piranesi's not their real
was.
name. So okay, and it is more modern. Okay, uh, but yeah, I mean, my headcanon is that all of an author's books are just in the same universe. Like, um, I talked about that. I talked about that on Monday with Schwab, like reading the Near Witch, and like, there's definitely stuff there that like has very clear tie-ins with some of her other works, and so um, I was hoping, and maybe that this is something that like now that we've gone through this, I would need to go back through Piranesi to read, since this one was written first. But like, see if there is something in Piranesi that is a more direct reference to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Um, Let me Google real quick. So I do think that like the way that they talk about magic makes a lot of sense, to have them be in a connected universe. So let's see. Okay, let me see. So this is from our books. Um, Let me see. This says, this is a quote. This would had ordinarily been a subject to please Mr. Norrell, but he was so relieved to discover that Strange did not intend to core with him in the library at Hurtview that he grew quite communicative. Oh, yes, indeed. There is indeed a path that joins all the mirrors of the world. It is known as the great medievals. No doubt they trod it often. I fear I cannot give you more precise information. The writers I've seen all describe it in different ways. Ermscork says the road across a wide, dark moor, whereas Hickman calls it a vast house, and many dark passages and great staircases. Hickman says that within the house there are stone bridges spanning deep chasms and canals of black water flowing between stone walls. To what destination or for what purpose, no one knows. So there's at least some very similar theming there between what's happening in Piranesi and what's referenced here. So yeah, and so like whether or not those are like actually direct references, I guess is up in the air, or if it's just the like infinitely or just like inspired by the same sources. So but it does seem like this is at least just from Googling, it does seem like this is a common theory that people have, that where Piranesi takes place is what Norrell is referencing, which is pretty cool.
I have one more quote just because it's so relatable, I feel. Um, this is from Strange's publisher. And he says, "How in the world is a man to know what to do when nothing behaves as it should?" Like, well, I feel that. All right. Final thoughts on Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
I don't think you could have got me to read Piranesi if we would have done these books in the opposite order. Like, and again, not necessarily that Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is a bad book, but like, I really just don't think I could have been convinced to do them in the other way. And as we're kind of like, we recently did our book club, we're not going to tier list this book. We're going to save it for the next one. But like, it's something that like I've obviously been thinking about with those other things, and it's just like it's hard for me to think of this book as a book I would want other people to read. Like there are so many, like even, I mean, I liked Piranesi. Like I would recommend that over this book 100% of the time. And I feel like that is just like my struggle with this book is it's like, it's not that it's bad. It's just so much that's not worth it. Even as a 2 times speed audiobook enjoyer. Like,
Yeah. I think, like, prefacing this all with, like, I did end up liking this book, but I too would not recommend it to everyone. Like, it, you'd have to have very specific tastes, I think. Um, and be aware of what you're getting into. Um, yeah, like I think it's interesting. It has some cool stuff in it, some cool characters, but it can be a lot to get through.
mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm very interested in 9 to 10 months when we return to the book club tier list where this one is going to sit with me. Like, is this going to be a book that like ages well? Of like, I think about the good parts. Like, I'm very curious to like where we're going to be for that, especially like since Emma's not here with us for this discussion. Of
Mhm.
like, I'm very curious to see where she's going to land on all of that when we have that chance to talk about it for a book club. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I didn't. I feel like I'm just like repeating, coming to the same point of just like this really just was not worth it for me.
Um, this was, however, a very fun discussion.
Yes, I agree. As always, I love our book club talks, and like even I feel like this book falls into a weird place of like we always reference it, the Ready Player 2 book, where like that book club I think was fantastic because we had so many problems with the book. Like, and we basically just kind of tear that book a new one as we are like doing that book club. On this one, I find that a lot harder to do. Like, Clarke is an amazing author. Like, she writes so well, so eloquently. Her characters, while I think that they become hard to love, I think she intends there to not be a hero. Like, and it's hard to be like, I don't like this book because it's good, it's just long. Like, it just feels like that's not a very like adept criticism. But
Yeah.
like, um, but I've yeah, it's a fantastic conversation. I love that. I've said this multiple times before too. That like with bringing you on board, that we started doing book club because I feel like we've had some like awesome discussions as part of it. With this as a good example.
Thank you. Thank you for talking about this with me. Thank you to Cameron and Emma and anyone else who joined us on letting me drag you along on Hefty Tome Summer and finally checking this book off of my TBR. Um, our next book club for September, we will be discussing Slaying the Dragon, A Secret History of Dungeons and Dragons by Ben Riggs. Figured after Hefty Tome Summer, we would switch it up and do something out of our norm and do a nonfiction.
Yeah.
Still super geeky, but what did you all expect?
Yeah.
Um,
I will say I'm already 2/3 of the way through this book. Like, I might have this done by podcast, like the next time we do podcast, because we have holidays on Monday, so I don't think we're going to be recording, but we'll stay tuned for that. But like, I'm already like 2/3 of the way through this book, so I've really been enjoying it. While I don't know if it was our intent, by our I mean when you brought this up as a potential book topic, it is a very fitting read to be reading right now, like with what's going on with D&D. Like, it has a lot of stuff that's kind of those who don't know history are destined to repeat it. And there is some like very on the nose stuff for what's going on right now. And so, even though it's talking about events that happened 30 years ago. So, definitely recommend so far based on the 2/3 of it that I've been through.
I'm excited. I'm excited to dig into it. We will be discussing that on September 23rd. Moving forward for the foreseeable future, book clubs will be on Monday nights now on our regular podcast days at the end of the month. Yes, we are First Geek 411 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Join our Discord server or send us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Check out our Redbubble store, watch live on our Twitch, and find all our videos over on YouTube. Thank you for joining us for Book Club discussing Jonathan Strange and Mr Norrell by Susanna Clarke. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES.
You can find me all around as Humar Whittle.
Read a book.
Read a different book. Got him.
Won't stop you from reading this one.
Yeah, I kind of go into like what I was saying at the end. I feel like I'm such a weird place with this book of like, again, it's not that it's bad. It's just like, I just feel like I would struggle to recommend it to other people. Like, I'm excited for us though to check in on the Amazon or the series that's on Prime, because I guess it was on BBC, but like I'm very interested to kind of check in and see like how does that story retelling, etc., how does that kind of carry its way into like into that more concise narrative. Like, this is like a weird example, but like it kind of reminds me of one of the reasons that I really like the Glass Cannon for actual play podcasts, but struggle with Critical Role, is merely the length. That like Glass Cannon episodes, like a long episode is 2 hours. But like that would be an insane thing for Critical Role to do. Like, and
an episode right there.
Yeah. And so like I feel like that's kind of what's like what the thing is with this is it's like it's not that it's bad. It's just that like it is a lot of content to consume. This was definitely also a book that I was like, I could be reading something else. Like, especially for that middle section. Like, I think that like by the time we get to like part 3, like the story really picks up and gets going, and it get like there's a lot that happens there. But like, I definitely think it's very interesting to like a very interesting latter third. But
yeah, like part of me is curious about how it would be to go back and read it again, like knowing where it ends up. Like, is there more that we didn't think tied in that does tie in more, and like stuff that takes on a different significance knowing the ending? And then there's another part of me that is like, this is not going to be a book that I reread.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll try the show first.
Yeah. 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 I'd be curious. I guess at one point in time, like Susanna Clarke has said that she's working on a sequel. Like that was like, I would like just from like the Wikipedia, that was like 2005 or something like that. So like, so we're not exactly like in close proximity to that, or if that's even like a oops, I'll put the thing over. Yeah, so in 2004, Clarke mentioned that she was working on a book that begins a few years after Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell ends, intended to center on characters such as Childemas and Vinculus, who, as Clarke says, are a bit lower down on the social scale. She commented in 2005 and 2007 that progress on the book had been slow due to her ill health. 2006, it was reported that she suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome, although she has since received a wide assortment of diagnosis. In promotional interviews for her second book, Piranesi, she commented that her illness would have made the effort required to research and write another book of the same scope insurmountable, even when partially recovered, and that she had instead devoted her time to an older, much more feasible idea, which became Piranesi. The sequel, she said, is a long way off. So, at least as far as like theoretically, there could be another one in the works, but if it is still happening, it's like theoretically being worked on. And apparently in January 2024, she stated she's currently working on a novel set in Brantford, England. So yeah, I do feel like also like shout out to her for like this being her first book. Like she'd written before. Apparently, The Ladies of Grace Adieu and Other Stories like was published after this, but had like been it's short stories, and so some of those short stories had been written before. But like, this is a chonker of a first novel to write. Like,
yeah, and like a really complicated novel to be writing as well. Like, yeah, obviously a lot of historical research that would have had to go into it. And then just like with all the footnotes and stuff, like that's an insane amount of world building and lore and all this stuff. Like, it's a lot. Like, I believe that a sequel is a massive project.
This is definitely the type of book that is like, you know what, maybe this is it for me. like you know, like you kind of read the like I've said this before with Schwab, of like Schwab is the kind of author that like reading her works makes me want to be an author. That like, and part of that is here's Cameron talking about Invisible Life of Addie LaRue again, take a drink, but like part of it is like I love that book so much that like it just makes me want to write something that could be remotely close to that impactful to people. Then this one is just like, you know what, maybe we don't. Like just like this behemoth is just like that's not for me. I meant to look. I was going to say, I do feel like I need to. I talked about this in our tier list. I have been going through. I went through and added all the books that we've ever done for Book Club to my story graph. And so I do think it's really funny, like looking at like the years of like, I've gone through 37 books this year. Like Slaying the Dragon will be, or whatever, will be, Slaying the Dragon. Yeah. Will be 38. I already have another book lined up for after I finish that one. And it's like, if you go back to like 2020, 2021, or 2021, 2022, I remember like in our end of year goals for like talking about like I would like to read a book that's not for book club. And so I just needed to finally embrace audiobooks and understand like step away from podcasts a little bit and do audiobooks instead.
I think I am like 4 books away from my story graph goal for the year,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm usually like come December like 10 books away from still. So audiobooks coming in clutch this
Mm-hmm.
year.
What's your goal for the year?
52.
Okay. Nice.
Like a book a week was my goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say I do feel like mine are like somewhat inflated by comics. Like there's a handful um, of ones that like I have that I was like, oh, I haven't read this in a while, and it's like it was post like X-Men '97 me of like I really want to read some more X-Men stuff, and so like I had some various ones that I'd picked up before, and so it's like, oh, I'll go back and read that. And there was like a 30-minute read as opposed to or an hour read or whatever to go through all 4 or 5 of them as opposed to like House of X, Powers of X. That took quite a while because that's a 12 comic arc. But like,
Counts.
yeah, hey, yeah, it counts. Reading's reading. Like that's kind of and the same with like audiobooks. Like audiobooks count. Like you're engaging your brain, and that's like the most important part. Like you are using imagination, you are thinking, you are like that's where it's at. That's why like even to go to like other things, tabletop RPGs. Like that's why that's great. Is it's like you are using your imagination to create a narrative. And so that's part of what's so cool. Okay. I think I need to wrap up so I can go get ready for bed. Chat, hope you'll have a fantastic evening. Rest of your time. Hope you have a great Labor Day. Without a U if you're in the United States, or with a U if you're in Canada. Again, not sure if we'll be recording on Monday. Check out the Discord as we will announce that. Yeah, with that, it's been an awesome book club. Again, Janine, thank you for bringing this book and for the great discussion. Bye.